Welcome to DevOps Breakfast. Good morning. I'm your host, Gina Smith.
I'm Michael Araneta.
And we're back. After summer vacation, we took the whole
We
month
are
of August
back,
off.
indeed. Yeah, it's been very interesting couple of weeks, especially as we were looking at work, but also trying to take an assessment of how exactly COVID-19 pans out. But yeah, we're good.
Yeah, so it wasn't really a summer vacation. It was kind of a staycation at home, and we're both working, but not recording
Yes.
for a month. So later in the show, we have Mohan Yelnadu. He's the, the group head of application security at Prudential Corporation Asia. Yeah, I got his title right. He'll be joining us from Singapore.
Yeah, we've been having many conversations with cybersecurity, information security professionals. Very interesting also to get a sense of what he thinks of this DevSecOps movement.
Yeah, DevSecOps is exploding, and that's reflected in the news, right? Let's see, I've got a couple of headlines here. Let's see, Fastly. So Fastly announced just a couple of days ago that they are acquiring, or at least their intent to acquire Signal Sciences, $775 million, Michael, 200 million of that in cash.
There's still plenty of investment money to go around, but obviously investment money is allocated to the need of the time. And obviously today we're going to hear from requirements of cybersecurity professionals. And I think that this particular investment was really made to fill in the gaps of security.
Yeah, it's clearly a DevSecOps buy, right? I mean, it's Signal Sciences is a web application and API protection kind of company. So this is all about the edge and open source too. So Signal Sciences its technology will be combined with Fastly's solutions, and Fastly says it's got a new security offering called Secure Edge or Secure at Edge. I'm not quite sure how you say that, but they render it Secure at Edge. So we'll be seeing a lot of that kind of consolidation. Right?
A lot of consolidation that's happening, but also applications that are getting exposed through APIs to what they call trusted third parties. It would be interesting as well to see how Edge plays around the edges of this greater ecosystem that we are building around our applications.
Well, that's true. I mean, the whole future of digital innovation, right, is all about these enterprises now becoming software factories, and APIs are a huge part of that because you can't possibly build all that software yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
And very interesting as well to look at what the API strategies are of this big organizations that are investing heavily into all these ecosystem type of frameworks as they change their business models. Very interesting stuff, definitely.
Yeah, it is very interesting stuff. Signal Sciences being bought. I wonder who'll be next. Well, let's see. Lenovo just today announced that they're updating their server platform. It's hard to say. Portfolio, the server portfolio. And so this is all about their HCI platforms, their hyper-converged infrastructure platforms.
Also interesting and quite timely as well. So we were speaking this week with one prominent banker who said that it is really impossible to get approvals to purchase servers now, which is a complete reversal to this strategy of the same bank 3 months ago. They went very heavily into cloud, and therefore it's very difficult now to purchase this really hardware that seemed to be emblematic of the past.
Yeah, because cloud is the king, right? Now for coronavirus, it was always growing rapidly, but this is crazy.
But yeah, you also wonder whether this craziness is because of all these requirements that are not necessarily planned because of COVID-19 response. And especially as we get a handle of the situation, will this growth momentum be sort of arrested or at least plateau?
If we can get a hold of the situation. When you say, Michael, that we were talking, I know, but the audience may not know that you were talking about either the Asia Financial Services Conference or this roving financial summit you've been doing all over Asia in the last week. Just talking to tons and tons of IT leaders?
So the team and I were able to get a sense of where the investment patterns will be for 2021, and that was a very interesting set of discussions. We are expecting, quite interestingly, a new wave of investments into this core systems of either banks and insurance, which I think will lift everyone's boats, especially in terms of investment behavior, particularly around that of API, microservices. Many of the core system providers that are really going to be to hit it big in the next 2 years will be those cloud native core systems that would be able to really support scale, but also support new ways of customer engagement.
Probably a big push in cloud native, right? I mean, what better time to get your microservices going and make sure you've got Kubernetes and container management, everything set up. And I guess there's no time now to do anything gradually. Everybody's racing forward. Interesting times.
But it will be a mix of gradual iterative development, but also this huge push to get your deadlines also sorted out. Very big developments, obviously, because they need these core systems urgently, especially as they need to work through this API world, more ecosystem-based world. And therefore, it will be a race against time, but also making sure that you are secure all along as you undertake this development.
I think it's very interesting. We did that spending survey all over the world, and while people, the respondents say that spending for DevSecOps will slow for this year, it kind of speeds up beginning in January. I guess that's a function of new calendar year budgets. They didn't expect this.
Yes. And that could be end of year budgets, but also we're looking at the new vulnerabilities that are being discovered as well. There was one insurer that was talking about all these reverse engineering of applications that's happening to really look at your code, and this can be exposed, not necessarily in the dark web, but actually just exposed to all your competitors or in fact consumers as well. So all these new techniques and tools that are being used by the cyber criminals are getting more sophisticated. We also need to get a handle of that.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the figures at the beginning of next year about how much higher breaches are right now.
Yes.
I mean, they've got to have spiked.
Yeah. And very interesting as well. I mean, where are those vulnerabilities for our very critical mission critical applications? We need to be able to spot them, identify them, but most importantly, orchestrate a response.
And are the vulnerabilities things that you're having to fix over and over? Like is it in a piece of open source code that your developers everywhere are using that same little library, and just really orchestrating the patching,
That's right. Yeah.
It'd be very interesting. Well, there's a whole host of DevSecOps best practices. And that's why it'll be so interesting to have Mohan Yelnadu join us from Prudential. He's here now. And Mohan Yelnadu joins us now. He's the Group Application Head of Security at Prudential Corporation of Asia. And boy, we've been trying to do this for a long time. It's so nice to finally see you.
Yes, indeed. Pleasure is mine. Yeah, thank you guys for hosting me. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking DevSecOps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've been through a roller coaster journey so far. I started as developer, and then eventually I moved into testing, the functional testing part of it, and then eventually I became a pen tester. And while I was doing my pen testing, I realized this sphere of influence is very limited to one or two teams with whom I'm interacting, but the impact was not reaching, the org wide. And that's where I decided to move to the left side. And from pen testing, I became a DevSecOps consultant, and that's where I became a defender. So, so the journey has been like, builder, breaker, and defender now.
And how would you characterize this defender role? You're talking obviously about influence, but also the ability to be able to introduce a different type of culture in the organization.
Yes,
we're seeing that's the number one challenge, Mohan, when we do when we do surveys of IT leaders, they say, boy, just blending the culture of developers
True.
and security is
True.
so difficult.
Absolutely. So you brought that point very nicely. The culture aspect in DevSecOps is very, very crucial. Uh, I'm lucky to work at three different continents, Europe, US, and now in Asia. And one thing I realized that Europeans have been able to adopt this very early, uh, for 5 years ago. US has started now, maybe a couple of years ago, and now in Asia it is picking up. So last 1 year, 1.5 years actually, I'm seeing this trend picking up very fast in Asia too. And the culture change, from what we knew in terms of application security and what we have to do, in terms of DevSecOps, there's a huge gap, and and absolutely it is completely dependent on how the culture of the organization actually receives it and embraces it. That part. I'm seeing in Asia it is slowly picking up, but I'm sure once they realize the value, of DevSecOps, early feedback, frequent feedback, and automated feedback. So these are three facets of DevSecOps. So these things, once they start seeing the value, I'm sure the culture, the leadership, as well as the development teams actually can quickly adopt and embrace it. Yeah.
It seems like it could actually save money. I mean, if you were not shifting security left, you develop all the software, it's fast,
Absolutely.
and then suddenly security puts the brakes on it. You have to redo it.
Absolutely. See, that's the beauty of shifting left, right? I mean, there are many surveys that have been carried out in the past, and one thing that is common in all these surveys is that later the defect you identify and remediate, more is the cost per defect that you need to put in. Earlier the defect you detect, the cost is very negligible. Sometimes even it is less than probably $10 to $100 per defect if you identify at the development stage. So DevSecOps enables that. So it actually pushes the feedback before the pen testing. See, earlier what used to happen was people used to develop, and just before release they used to pen test, and that was the only feedback they used to get. And now what's happening is the due to DevSecOps, there are various places or integration points, as I call. So these integration points actually enable different set of people to get that right feedback. And once they get feedback about, hey, I have this vulnerability from my custom code that I wrote, or I have this vulnerability from the component that I'm using, or hey, I'm using this container, but before even I use it, actually I see the container has so many vulnerabilities, So this feedback actually enables me to make those corrective changes immediately now here, rather than after pen testing. That saves a lot of money, effort, and resources. Indeed.
In the start of the process, how should actually this conversation really begin with regard to security? And eventually, as you progress through your development cycle, do you ease that in, or do you just really intensify the effort from the very beginning?
Yeah, to add to that question, that's such a good question, Michael. Do you start by achieving alignment with business and developers and security, or is there even a step before that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. To have that change in culture, to ensure that we get enough funding and enough resources, you need to have the blessings from both the top management, where they fund it, and the development community, where they embrace it. Ultimately, they are the ones who are our customers. So different organizations have followed different approaches. I have witnessed both sides of it. In some organizations, the top-down approach really works well. In Europe, especially, I've seen that the leadership is very, very crystal clear in terms of security aspect, because they have seen the worst of it. And that's why the moment they say, okay, this is coming from security and this adds this value, and this requires this kind of funding. They analyze it, of course, and then they say, yes, go ahead, or, they may suggest some changes. But the buy-in from top management is very, very crucial. So once you get that buy-in, the message is very clear to down the line, to adopt and move on. In some organizations, I have seen development teams are very, very powerful. They are super powerful, and because see, all other departments, you see, those are kind of cost centers, but development teams actually bring in business features, so they are like profit centers. So they dominate, in some of the organizations. So it's in such cases, it is good idea to show them, bring in a tool, evaluate it, and show them, bring those development leads, the influencers in development community, bring them on board, show them the different facets of different tools, like it could be static analysis tools or dynamic analysis tools or container security tools. So bring in development teams, bring in SRE, system reliability engineering team, key stakeholders, show them the benefit. And once I'm very well convinced that once they get, they see the value, you don't have to do anything, no convincing is required. The moment they see value, they actually say, okay, yes, let's go for it. Because what has happened so far, unfortunately, is that security teams are, they are branded as Department of No, and it is always said that, hey, okay, if I have to go to security team, I have to ensure that I have enough time and in my release schedule. So that slowly is changing. Now people are realizing that, okay, development teams can actually interact closely as partners with security teams, and it's no more Department of No, but it is Department of Yes and partners. So that change I'm seeing. So getting buy-in from the top management as well as key stakeholders from the development, from the SRE community is very crucial. And if you have that, the change becomes very smooth actually.
Should the security team be involved in getting this buy-in from management? Because I think, management would probably just say, as long as you work out security, we will look at the business benefits of this particular initiative.
Yes, in fact, see, security teams are keeping track of, what is happening around the world in terms of security domain, right? Development teams, they are focused on how to improve development effort, efficiency in that. So it's important that security teams are involved in the buy-in decisions, because they see, what is happening and what works, right? But at the end of the day, what is important is what your organization needs are, and that your teams, your development teams would know your development requirements. Your security team would know your security requirements, because they understand the ecosystem of your organization and its needs. So definitely, security teams need to be involved, while talking to senior management to get the buy-in. Yeah.
Is there some wisdom in just busting that security silo altogether, and just so that, just as you united developers and operations for DevOps, you now have a multidisciplinary team that also includes security, and there's no more fiefdom over there? I know that's got to be difficult.
Yes, that's true. It has to be, a coordinated team effort rather than, working in silos. Earlier that worked, and we have seen the flip side of it, right? We have seen the longer release cycles. We have seen blame games. We have seen waiting for another team to fail, to point the fingers, and there have been a lot of case studies of that, and we have seen that now, there's no choice left for development teams, to operations or SRE teams, and for security teams, but to work together and work together as a team, So development teams can seek guidance from, security teams, how to fix some of the issues. SRE teams can actually enable them, the faster deployment, as well as, the production operational management. Yes. So unless they all work together, things would be very chaotic. Yeah.
Which unit in the security team are we talking about in the first place? Because if you look at our studies, there would easily be about 40 solutions that the security team has to really look at. And especially with this new world of software that we are in, everything is involved. API security, cloud-related security, perimeter security as well, network security, a lot of things need to be involved.
Development security, production security,
Yes,
and all of
yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think, as you rightly said, we started in early 90s with perimeter security, and then we started with physical security first, network was not even there, and it is still, physical security is still there, there are guards in front of our buildings or premises. And then from physical security, we came to, as the network progresses, we came to perimeter security. And from there, as the internet came, we started looking into internet security, where the focus was, hey, what ports you have kept open, what services you are running on it, etc. And now, then we specialized in intrusion prevention systems, intrusion detection systems, and then we moved to firewalls, and through firewall, then we evolved into application security. So as the attack surface started growing, as the sophistication in technology increased, both for developers as well as for attackers, so slowly our approach towards defending also started aligning with it. So that's how we can see the trend from physical security to perimeter to network to firewalls and now application security. And under application security, you have, again, as you rightly said, multiple facets, like you have normal applications, you have client server applications, you have APIs, you have mobile applications, you have, serverless, you have cloud deployments, you have on-prem deployments. So, every facet of security is involved, is required for an enterprise to survive.
And then open source further complicates it, right? Because now suddenly you have all these vulnerabilities you may not even know about, multiple developers using the same piece of code. Michael and I were talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2017 was a big milestone in terms of creating awareness among development community, about the open source vulnerability and its impact. So the kind of breach that we saw in one of the largest examples in 2017 actually opened eyes for everyone almost. And if you look at the contribution of open source components that we are using in our day-to-day life has been growing. Earlier, 2 or 3 years ago, I used to quote the figures like, say 40% open source component, 60% our code, our own code. But now it has gone to an extent where they're saying it's 80% is coming from open source, while 20% is coming from what we write. So obviously, we have to keep our assessments focused towards both the code that we develop as well as the code that we depend upon. And open source security is very, very crucial. Unless people take it seriously, you can go very easily wrong.
Unfortunately, there are tools, right? You've got software composition analysis tools. But it strikes me that just weaving together now all your tools and, for the whole life cycle, all the infrastructure, it's not so much difficult as it is, wow, complex.
Yes, that is very, very true. Now, imagine, you take one library, open source library, you say, okay, say Apache struts, for example, and Apache struts has multiple releases, right? And then each release, you need to ensure that if you are using, it is secure, right? And then you are using probably hundreds of components, right? So what happens is, for all those hundreds of components, you need to look at how many versions are there in in public domain, how many are secure, how many are not secure, and keeping that on track using manual analysis is humanly, I mean, it is possible, but very, very tedious. And I think there is definitely scope for automation. And there are tools, thankfully, both in commercial and open source domain, which actually help organizations to do this analysis in a very automated way. And they give a very good insight in terms of whether you should upgrade to X to Y version, or you should actually think of replacing that, because none of the versions are secure. Everything is vulnerable in that particular component category. So you may need to switch to some other component which gives same functionality, but it is secure. So yeah, that kind of feedback we get from these automated tools these days.
Automate everything.
Absolutely, that's the
that
mantra.
You can, right?
Yes, of course, yes.
Mohan, you were talking about 2017 as the banner year, but 2020 actually is the bigger banner year of our times. What have we learned over the past couple of months, especially as we really responded to this crisis?
I mean, I came across a funny cartoon and a survey where it said, hey, who brought the digital transformation in your organization, whether it is CTO, CEO, or COVID? And it said COVID, Imagine, before 2020, people were actually working remotely off and on. But the extent of remote working was restricted to only 5, 10, 20%, only on need basis, only when you have some work, probably you were allowed to work from home. Otherwise, you were always expected to work from office. But things have changed, so people now almost 95%, 90 to 95% of the workforce is actually working from home, even now. And when people work from home, of course, they have to ensure that when they connect to the enterprise systems, the connection is secure. When they use some softwares which they need to use for their work purpose, they have to ensure they're using it in a secure manner. So, and there needs to be a lot of awareness in terms of how to work securely from home. Now that has been ingrained across the working community, very smoothly. Because it was required, otherwise survival itself was difficult, and that is basically digital transformation. And I've seen many organizations have decided to extend this work from home to not just 2020 but 21 as well, and 2022 as well. And some have decided not to even have any real estate investment, just work completely from home. And I've seen people, some of the organizations working very smoothly through this approach. They save a lot of cost in terms of offices, because they have to buy or rent these offices at a prime location. So that has changed now. Of course, there are benefits as well as some of the disadvantages, that you don't get to interact with people as people, like, although we are interacting, but it's a virtual meet, not a in-person physical meet. So that we would be missing, but you can always find some events every now and then organized to have that physical interaction too. So you can always compensate. But I think there should be a balance between work from home and work from office. And if you're able to achieve that, and if you can balance work and home, that's the best thing. So 2020, yes.
If there's a lesson, it's flexibility, right? Or continuous experimentation or something like that.
True, absolutely. And 2020 has taught us all that lesson, basically. Yeah.
And this integration of security to the development, to the DevOps process, hopefully it has not been arrested, I think, in terms of momentum. I just also wonder if this is an opportunity as a reset, so that we start integrating security from the get-go in all these projects that are emerging.
Absolutely. I completely agree with it. In fact, doing these things in an automated way, in a frictionless way, integrating security and operations with the development, always adds to the momentum rather than anyway slowing down. And these days we have tools, we have processes where we can actually increase the speed of all these. So yes, I completely agree with that part. Yes.
Like that old saw, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? If you could
Yes,
survive this, you could survive anything. Mohan Yelnadu, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for joining us today
Welcome.
after
My
so
pleasure.
many attempts. And we will be back with more DevOps breakfast next week. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you,
Gina.
guys. Thank you
I'm
for
Michael
hosting.
Araneta.